This is your DNB recap of the Toronto Raptors' 125-108 loss to the Utah Jazz. It was not a pretty night for the Toronto Raptors, and when you factor in the fact that now they've lost 11 straight to the Utah Jazz, it probably shouldn't have been a surprise to too many people. But that being said, it seems like it was for a lot of people. A lot of angry folks making comments after the game, during the game on Twitter, and hearing on the radio a lot of the same stuff. People mad at Jay, people mad at Brian, people mad at some of the players. But come on, folks. This game was one that you should have seen coming. The Utah Jazz have Jerry Sloan. They've run the same system for years and years and years. They're one of the more fundamentally sound offensive teams in the NBA. And the Toronto Raptors, defensively, heading into the season, were not expected to be fundamentally sound. And quite honestly, there shouldn't be a lot of shock here. The reasons why it happened were pretty simple too. The point guard play for the Toronto Raptors was not good from Jarrett Jack or Jose Calderon, as both struggled, and Darren Williams had a fantastic night against them. He is an all-star after all, and he showed you why last night, and did a very good job for his basketball team. The other concern, despite Andrea Bargnani having 26 points and 9 rebounds, defensively, Al Jefferson took him to school in this game in a major way. And that probably wasn't a surprise either, if you're being honest about it. And the other thing, I think the Raptors, they tend to do this in games. They let someone get hot from the three-point line. That was Miles. He was 5 of 6. Made a lot of key three-pointers for the Jazz in this basketball game. And the Jazz really came out and took this one in the first quarter, 41-22, a 19-point hole. And the Raptors were pretty much done from that point. A big comeback in the third where Andrea Bargnani led that charge. But it's one thing to get back and get a game even. It's another thing to take that final step and take the lead and win the basketball game. And clearly the Raptors didn't do that. The Jazz came back in the fourth quarter, outscored the Raptors 34-24, and kind of cruised on to the victory, so to speak. And when it comes to Andrea, one of the things I find, and I find it interesting, that you see him have big nights in games where the Raptors are clearly kind of out of it. And he produces big numbers, and you see a lot of the things that you wish you'd see from Andrea, quite frankly, in games where they have a chance to win. Games like they had versus the Knicks and the Kings. Those rebounds would have been a heck of a lot nicer in those games than that they were tonight. And it just didn't happen. Reggie Evans kind of back to reality a bit, not super rebounding Reggie in this one. Sonny Weems had a nice night off the bench. And Amir Johnson turned his ankle but did come back. We'll see what he's like for the game versus the Lakers on Friday. All that being said, even Jay Triano kind of surprised me, because in his post-game remarks, a lot of people have heard about it, that Jay kind of used some colorful language in it and was pretty upset, but I'm not exactly sure why, because this is one of those games where, if he's honest with himself, this was a game that was going to be hard for his basketball team to win. Maybe he's trying to send a message, get them ready to take on the Lakers, who are going to offer just as much of a challenge, if not more. But still surprising that Jay would go off like that and go a little KG on us, dropping an F-bomb. Not the normal Jay Triano we're used to seeing. But that being said, this game was pretty much picture perfect to how you probably should have envisioned it going. The Jazz were way too much for the Toronto Raptors, and they exposed them defensively and did a lot of things well, and the Raptors, quite frankly, didn't. They didn't get good point guard play. They didn't have a lot of things go their way, and anytime you get behind 19 points in the first quarter, that is not a recipe for success in the NBA, and it certainly wasn't on this night. So the Toronto Raptors fall to 1-3, and now have to face the LA Lakers, which will be a heck of a challenge for them. And it's going to be hard for them to even be competitive in this one, coming off such a tough loss to the Jazz, where they never were really in it, and then they start this trip with a game they probably should have won against the Kings. It is the same old, unfortunately, for the Toronto Raptors on West Coast trips. They don't tend to do well, and the historical stats prove it, as the Jazz now have won 11 straight against the Raptors, and the last time the Raptors beat the Jazz was in 2004. And when you look at all the West Coast teams, you see similar stats in most of the places the Raptors go when they go out on the West Coast. The places like Denver, the places like Sacramento, Los Angeles against the Lakers, and all those places, the Raptors traditionally have not done well. But like I said, this was one you probably should have seen coming. If you didn't and you're frustrated, it's going to be a long year for you, because there'll be other nights like this, and the Toronto Raptors have to kind of test themselves to forget about nights like this. Not the things they did wrong, but forget about the loss and move forward, because they will have opportunities against teams that they can beat. And if they let losing streaks like this get to them, it's going to be an even longer year for this basketball team. They have to have a short-term memory about nights like last night, and move on and move forward. And that's what we'll do in the DNB. The Raptors taking on the Lakers Friday, and we'll see what happens there, as Kobe and crew will take on your Toronto Raptors. And well, that might be scary too. Halloween's over, but the scary remains for your Toronto Raptors.